All right, Dion McCormick here, and I am joined with Sarah. Sarah, you there?
I am.
All right. Actually, Dave, as I mentioned earlier, is out. He's got the plague, so he will not be joining us today. We miss him and hope he gets well soon. By the way, that's a golden opportunity. If you would like to ask any questions that you've been scared because Dave is monitoring it, this is your week to ask them because Dave can't stop that, and there's nothing he can do. He can just watch this video and see what we do there. Also, just to let you know, I'm broadcasting live from fabulous Burlington, Massachusetts, the headquarters of Alpha Software. And in fact, I'm broadcasting live from Sarah's desk right now. I'm sitting right here at her desk. And this is where the magic of documentation and reference and the wonderful documentation site happens right here. So it's kind of hallowed ground. So, Sarah, I'll keep your desk clean, by the way. So where are you, Sarah? You're like in an
Ironically,
undisclosed secure environment or something, or
yeah, ironically, I'm two time zones away in Idaho today.
it's like
Like,
it's Freaky Friday. We're switching spots.
yeah,
Anyway, thank you.
we've swapped.
That's great. Well, I appreciate you joining us and helping out as always. So, hey, first and foremost, we're here for you. Take the time to go to the Q&A area of the GoToWebinar control panel. Put your questions in there. We will do our best to answer those today, and if we can't, we will execute on them at a later date. Also, remember, as always. Oops, let me think. Share. Let me go ahead and share. Is it sharing? Okay. Are you seeing the screen?
I don't see your screen yet. Oh, I might have to.
Recording. Okay. There we go.
There
I
we
thought I
go.
had all the power. There we go. Awesome. Okay. So we should be sharing now. Good. And anyway, as always, each week you can send emails to guides at alphasoftware.com, Guides. That's monitored by our team. And we use that to answer questions and also come up with new topics for these webinars. So we love it. In fact, this topic that we're starting, our second in our series about the ViewBox control, was triggered from a bunch of questions from people. And we're actually getting a lot of input, a lot of great. What was interesting is there's some very fascinating things people are doing with view boxes out there, and we'll be able to share that as we go through it from this standpoint there. So thank you. Go to the questions area again, put your questions in there. Sarah will be monitoring that. I'm going to do a quick demonstration about a function of this view box, a couple of different things about the view box to continue to enhance our knowledge of that. And as we move through it, as your questions are there, we'll go through those and try and do as many as possible today. And love it. And remember, Tuesdays, if you're interested in learning about more about Transform, which amazing things are happening in Transform. I just got off a meeting yesterday where some of the newer capabilities were demonstrated and stuff. We've got a new release coming out soon. It just continues to grow, enhance, and become more and more powerful. So if you're not on Transform Tuesday, send a link or request to guides at Alpha Software. We'll make sure to do that. And remember, there are sandbox accounts available for our trusted developer community that you can use to play with Transform, and a lot of really exciting things there. So with that, ready to go, Sarah?
Yep, I'm ready.
All right. Anyway, oh no, thank you. And so we're going to continue our discussion of the ViewBox control. Last week we kind of laid the groundwork, the fact that it was a data-driven control. It mixes JSON, which by the way, it will generate for you if you pick certain backends, with HTML and JavaScript to come together to create basically an HTML representation, but it could be data-driven. And more importantly, it has a lot of power in terms of, we kind of showed a quick demonstration of things called items, where you can enhance it by adding JavaScript to the ViewBox control through something called an item to enhance it. So I'm going to kind of take a step back. I want to talk a little bit more about how would you use the ViewBox control? What are the cool things you can do with that? So with that in mind, we're going to go ahead and do a quick demonstration and discuss that. So I'm going to go back into my alpha development environment. And in fact, I'm going to use a built-in template that's available to you to kind of start this exercise out. So I'm here in the Alpha Web Projects control panel. I am in the Web Components area, and I'm going to go ahead and create a new one here. Actually, the shortcut, I can click New here and walk through this, or I can use this drop-down box and say UX component here. Now, there is a nice little view box called Using a View Box or Template using a view box to show details for a list record. And we can kind of show that there. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click OK so we can build that here. And then I'm going to click OK here. So we showed this last week, but I kind of wanted to show you the ability that it allows you to link a list box with all the capability there. And instead of using a detail view or something like that, you can use a view box to represent the data in here. So you'll notice as I click through and select a list item, it's refreshing my view box here to allow you to see that data. And therefore, I have infinite flexibility of representing this information to the user. So I now can use standard HTML, CSS, and I can in fact hire a designer from Upwork or Fiverr or someplace like that, and that allows me to create really nice visual, like with rounded edges and corners and badges and things like that, including graphics, etc. So one of the key use cases here is that I have some data I want to present, but I want to present it in a very nice looking format. Now you'll see we're actually showing the list control here, but you don't necessarily need to show the list control for this to work. You could programmatically have this list control hidden. Thus, it's going to automatically download and update and bring offline all that data, and then use your own method, either buttons or actually items within the view box to actually trigger the selection or move of a row in here. And every time I select a different row, it's going to update my view box. So it presents a different paradigm on how to interface with people. And view boxes are really powerful from the standpoint of, because they're pure HTML and CSS, you have infinite flexibility to use your own styles. You're not limited to our built-in styles. You can create your own. Also, view boxes have a lot of really cool controls that allow you to basically say, oh, if you're in a phone, then, or, use this view box layout. View box have something really cool just to kind of explain to it. One of the cool features of a view box here is the ability to have multiple layouts. So you can actually create, so you'll notice here, I've got a layout here, and that's my default layout. But I can go to view box properties and say I have multiple layouts, and then I can go right here and you'll notice I've got a single layout. And so I'm going to add a layout saying layout 2. I'm going to go to my view box layout. You'll see that I'm currently, here's my default layout. So I can grab this layout here, copy that, go to my default layout 2, paste it, and now I can go in here and modify this, saying this is layout 2 or whatever it happens to be. So it could be, something that's geared for, say, a mobile platform or something that you want. And so both of these representations are in the view box, and then there's action JavaScript. There's other ways you can trigger to say at any one point in time, show this layout versus this layout. So let's take an example of that. And one of the coolest things built into it. So again, a view box is an area on your screen, and you'll see based on that a layout. And you can have multiple layouts built into it, and you can either manually select it, or I'm going to show you a cool trick that's built into it. Let's say I have 2 layouts, and one layout is going to be optimized for portrait mode. So I'm going to go ahead and just type in here just to show you what the example is. Portrait mode here. And then I've got another one where it is laid out to optimize a landscape mode. So you have 2 different modes that you want to have this in there. So what I can do is I could use what's called responsive rule layouts rules at the UX level, but built into the view box is something cool. When you say you have multiple layouts, you can say auto select on orientation change. So I'm going to click that, and you'll notice it says, oh, guess what? Tell me which layout I should use when the phone or device is in portrait mode, one for landscape mode. So portrait, I'm going to select my default layout. I'd probably rename those better. Then landscape layout, I go here and I'd select layout 2. So now I have these 2 layouts built into it, and they're auto selectable. So now I'm going to go ahead. Let's go to multiple layouts, select default, and we'll say that's the default layout. Okay. So now I'm going to save this, and I'm going to and I'll go orientation layout view box _UX. And so I'm going to demonstrate this, but to make it work, I'm going to go to mobile. Okay, so now I'm going to do this and demonstrate it in a mobile platform. So let me go ahead and just make this an iPad vertical. Okay, so you'll notice when I click here, it's rendering my ViewBox with my default layout, which is called portrait mode. Okay, now watch, I'm going to take iPad vertical and I'm going to change that to iPad horizontal. And now when I select, oh, it's not working on this one. Wait a minute. Maybe I didn't set that up correctly. Let's see here. Oops. Wow. My demo is not working too good today. Let's see. Yeah, wait, let me go back and check this and make sure I did this right. And the ViewBox portrait layout, auto select on there. Oh, I'll have to check that. I apologize. My demo is really not working well today. So I've got multiple layout. Let me look at my ViewBox layout for default is portrait mode. And let me go look here and make sure I said that. Landscape. I might have to come back to everybody. That was working when I did that this morning. So I must have done something amiss here. But what will happen is it will automatically, based on that, it might be because I have this list control here, and so I'll have to go play with that just to make sure, and I'll come back and do that. And I apologize everybody for not having an effective demonstration here. But the idea is the ViewBox can watch this, and when it will modify that. And I think it's because I have both of these on the screen at the same time. But there's another powerful way you can do this too. So I'm going to go ahead and add a button here just to kind of show you how this is working. I'm going to click a button here. And I'm going to say on that button, I'm going to call that one portrait. And I'm going to add another button here. And I'm going to put in here landscape. Oh, there you go. And I'm going to have them both on the same level here. So now I'm going to go into portrait, and then I can add a action here. And there's a set of ViewBox control actions. So as you can see, we have a lot of cool ones, which is refresh data, select layout, refresh. So what I can do is if I have different representations, either because of its portrait landscape, or just I want to show like view number 1 has a minimal set of data. View number 2 is a graphical view of what it is. You can click select layout, select the view box you want, and say, okay, use the default layout here. Okay. And then I'll go to this one right here. I'll do the same thing. And I'll go to the view box here, and I'll select layout, and I want to use view box. In this case, I'm going to use my layout 2, which is my landscape one. And if this works properly, everything will be fabulous. So now I can go into working preview. Okay. So we're in default portrait. So I'm going to click landscape, and notice what happened. And notice how it's instantaneous. Basically what happens is when I click these buttons, it's going to re-render this information here. So basically it tells, oh, okay, you're now in landscape mode, so please use this representation. Now, two things. One is I apologize, my vertical horizontal, but that could auto trigger it there. Two, this provides some really cool stuff. So for instance, let's say in my view box, maybe I didn't want to do all the data fields, but I wanted to kind of create a wizard interface where there's different subgroups of information. This works really well on small platforms because you might not have that much screen space. So I might have like 20 fields here, but when I'm in the first mode, it's there. And since it's instantaneous, you'll see the user gets a very fun experience. So let's go in here and play with this a little bit more. Go into my view box. I'm going to go to my layout 2, and in this case what I want to do is I want to go BR, and then I'm going to go ahead and put in here city, and then a BR state. Okay, so now I've got that okay in there. Now if I go back into working preview, so I've got this data here. It's in portrait mode to start out. Now landscape, you'll notice it's a whole different representation. So and I could include and disclude or include, outclude, whatever, the items I don't want there. So the neat thing about the view box is that multiple layouts, these layouts can be auto triggered by screen orientation, which I've got to fix and get back to you on that, or manually you can do the same thing from there. So the cool thing is that you have a lot of flexibility to say, hey, you know what? In this scenario, I want to show this view of the data, or in this scenario, I want to show the view. And you'll notice how fast it is because it's basically just re-rendering in the device. So it's not going back and reloading data. It's basically saying, oh, okay, I'm re-rendering. I'm just going to take that data and lay it out this way here. So there's really a lot of fun stuff you can do. So you'll notice I've got Boston, Massachusetts. If I don't even want to show that on the first one, I can go to my first layout here, and I can get rid of that. And now what you'll see is that I can kind of pick and choose in each layout. I can kind of show a different set of fields. So you'll see John Smith, but now maybe it's the full record kind of say there. So I think you get the idea is that view boxes are cool because of the multiple layouts, the ability for you to use it to create really neat interfaces for things. And by the way, these buttons right here I'm using as external buttons, but there's nothing to be said that you couldn't actually put it on graphics or items in here inside your view box and use the item concept to trigger these activities. It's pretty fun. And we'll actually show a demo of that, how you can actually get rid of and not even show this background here and show just this layout and be able to navigate this list. And also, as you navigate it, update results and other things there. Now, there's one other thing I want to show from a demo standpoint today before we get to our Q&A section. So right now what we've done is when we built our list, our view box, we told it that our data source was static JSON. And we've talked about before, you can get a list control, but this is a little bit more advanced. That's why we include this template here. So what we do is we create a static set of JSON to load this here, and then do the actual building of this here. And then in list control, just to show you what's going on, is when you actually click or select an item, it runs this little piece of JavaScript that basically gets the data from the current item in the list and then populates this. And this is super flexible because now you have a lot, you can pull down a lot of data in a list control, and this can be triggered through any number of ways to trigger that loading of the view box. Basically, we're just saying, grab the data out of the list. So in this case, I'm getting it from a list, but it could be from a client-side data cache. It could be a web API call. There's many, many different ways to do that. And that's how we've structured here. But we're still using a list control. Now, in this case, we really have a read-only environment where all I'm really doing is I'm creating a user interface where someone on, say, a mobile tablet could have this data and be able to show this data, locally on the system. And therefore, I've used a list control because the list control has that capability to call the back end, pull the data down, and render it in this kind of list capability. But the view box actually has a really cool capability to mimic a list box. And I want to show you that right now, because the reason why is if you're not going to use all the editing functionality of the list box, there's no reason to add all that weight to your application. So we can use basically the view box as a lightweight version of a list control. So let me go ahead and show you an example of how to do that real quick. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to create my new UX component. I'm not going to use, right now I'm not going to use any template per se. Now I'm going to add a list, I'm going to add, a view box. So I'm not adding the list control, I'm adding a view box. And I'm going to go ahead and say, okay. So now I'm going to go into my view box. It's going to ask me, where am I going to get my data, or actually the data source. So I want what's called data, because this will automatically load the view box with some data from another source. Now, the one we've used before is list, but I'm going to go ahead and say database query, and I'm going to set up a query here, and I'm going to go ahead and pull in customers, and let's go ahead, and in this case, I'm going to pull in a bunch of information here, There, cool. Okay, so now all I'm doing here, and I'll preview it, is just yanking some data out of my database. And so in this case, the view box is not going to the list, it's going directly to the back end. No, I don't like preview, it doesn't there. Oh, I haven't laid out my preview. That's why that didn't work. So I've got that information. Now what I'm going to do is go, so you'll see, here are my fields that are available. I'm going to go to my view box layout here, and I'm going to go ahead and use the genie. And I'm going to add an item here, which is, let's go ahead and go to my data controls. Here are my fields. And I'm going to add customer ID and company name to start. I'm going to click OK. So if I go ahead and do a preview, you're going to see that it basically just spits out each of these items over and over again. So each of these is an ID and a customer name of that there. But there's a cool feature built into the list or in the view box. I'm going to highlight these two items here. I'm going to click Add Item, and I'm going to go to Containers, and I'm going to select List Row Container. So again, I connected to my data source. I selected the fields I want to be in my layout, and now I'm going into Add Item Containers, List Row Container, and I click OK. And you'll notice it's just like the UX Builder, it's put a header and a footer, so these things are inside of there. Now watch when I run this. Go ahead and save this. I'll go list, or ViewBox as list UX. Now look at my working preview here. You'll see, wow, this looks like a list control. It's got selections, so I can select an item here. It's taking my information, i.e. that name in there. But here's the major difference. So that's really cool. Now, this is not editable information, but then I can now go in and inside the view box, add other representations, link it to other view boxes and things like that. Because, and let me go ahead and show you this real quick. If I go into view box and I click on this list row container, I can actually trigger what happens in here. So I can select what the row value is here. So I'm going to select the row value as customer ID. So that means it now knows that each one of those values there. And then what I can do is on a click event, I can basically trap that information. So it has a lot of the basic capabilities of list control, but without all the weight of, for instance, having, the data management, data update, all that under the air. So what you'll find is for your read-only scenarios, this is a great way to create great user experiences that are small, lightweight, and fast, meaning they load up really quick on the mobile device. They're very fast because basically it's just rendering some HTML. It actually takes far less time because we don't have to do all that tracking stuff. But now you can still like trap the trick or sort of the tick event here and call other things and do things from there. So keep in mind that the view box is a really good handy replacement for the list control for situations where you don't want all that extra weight and you don't need all that. And we see that a lot. Maybe it's a connected system where you want to basically, when someone clicks on something, you want to call a back-end system. Well, you're not editing data local, so why not let Alpha take care of setting these things up and structuring it from there? It will increase the speed of performance of your applications. They're very fast and easy to put together. They actually simplify your environment because you have a single control here. And I say, oh, you know what? I actually want to show 3 things here. So I'm going to add a data control here, which is the address. And now I can go ahead and now you'll see I can go in the working preview, and instead of just the 2 items now, it shows the address information on each of those pages right here. I can actually go back into the view box, go to the freeform editor, and you'll notice it's shown me how that's done. So now I can go in here and just edit this with CSS and HTML to make it look, and it will still render each of these items. It put basically each of these items in a div, and this dim right here, it's done this little coding to make what's called an A row type item, which treats it like a list control. So once you've kind of built it in the Genie, you can come into the freeform editor, and now you can use all the power of here to say, oh, I'm going to apply city and state. I'm going to go ahead and put a back there. So I'm going to go and click OK. And so now I can go in there and make my list control, or what my fake list control. I'm going to wait till this renders real quick. So notice now I've got complete control over making that look really nice, but it still acts like a list control, so I can trap the click event on a particular item. And like the list control, I can tell this view box here to consume the whole side, the screen of a panel card or whatever it happens to be, much like we've done with the list control. And you'll see in a moment. Oh, Oh, I've got to be in a panel card. So let me go ahead and do that here real quick. Panel, add a panel card, and then go and do that there. And that will now stretch it out. So like if you're on a mobile device, you'll see what it looks like, and you still have this, and the scrolling and all works the same. Like if you do scroll kind of activity, swipe gestures, all works the same. So the ViewBox is very, very flexible. You can create multiple layouts for it, so you can create essentially dynamic user interfaces for your users. It can also mimic other controls in alpha. For instance, it can mimic a list control in this scenario. It is extremely small and lightweight. The total amount of space this takes is nothing, and therefore your system will run faster and it will be more responsive. And with that, Sarah, I'm going to go ahead and open it up for questions. We'll be going ahead in the next couple of sessions, diving a little bit more deeper into the ViewBox control, and so show you some other round trip and calling web APIs and doing other fun things with it, which hopefully should expand your thinking about how to use it. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and open it up for questions, and Sarah, see if there's any questions we have.
Okay. We have a few questions.
Good. Get to work, everybody.
Go ahead and type your questions in now in the questions box. So let's see what we have here. Okay. This person asks, can you show us again where we enter any CSS that we get from Fiverr or Upwork for the ViewBox control?
Oh, good. Thank you very much. Okay. So I'm going to go in here into the ViewBox here, and you'll notice that we have ViewBox layout. This is your HTML. Now you'll notice that this is straight HTML. Like for instance, there's a class in here, a pre-built class. So here is your CSS. So you paste your HTML in here. You go to CSS. This is where you add your CSS here. And so you can actually put in a CSS. Let's see. Let's go ahead and I'm not a CSS guy. That's why I go to Fiverr. But I'm going to add one in here, and I'm going to call it company. Should it be .company? I forget. Is it .company? Do I want to say that?
Yes.
And then I'm going to make the font family be, and you got to be careful, but this will work because it's on my local machine here. Actually, let's go ahead and go to font family and do like, I don't know if it shows up here. Yeah, anyway, but I can go in to the properties here, and I can go down and say, okay, like for instance, the font size, I'm going to increase that to, 12. So it's a little smaller. Style, I'm going to make it bold and do those pieces here. So now I've created a style, and this is the style. So this is what they're going to get you. And so you'll have a style sheet basically that comes with it, and you paste it in right here. So literally you paste your style in here. And then if they've done the work, they've probably already gone in here. And so I'm just going to go like, let me see if it's a P in there. I think this is how you do that, right? A paragraph, and then you say class is equal to company. And so they'll have done all this work. What they'll do is they'll give you the CSS as an external style sheet. You just copy and paste that style sheet here. They'll give you your HTML. You paste it there. And basically, they're just referring to it. Now, let's see if this actually works. We should see if I did it correctly. I'm not sure. I'm not a CSS guy, but should do the training on that. Yeah. So you can see now, if you look here, the city is much smaller than the state. So it's applying this. Now, I did it wrong because, oh, you know what? I used, and this is where your designer, I used a P, but wouldn't it be span? I think it's span. It's like the one I would use because it doesn't put in a carriage return. So what that does is basically say anything inside the span, which is the city and the customer ID. Why would that be city? Customer ID. It's going to apply that class only within this context here. So now if I go into working preview, this should maybe look a little nicer. Yeah, you'll notice that I don't have that space anymore. And so this is where you play with that. It's applying it to both of them. So maybe it doesn't apply to the span. So long story short, that's where your expert will tell you.
If you go back, someone has pointed out you need slash before
there you go.
span. There you go.
Yeah, it takes a village. Okay. No, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Another set of eyes on there. Yeah, because I didn't have the Terminator. So now you'll see here the customer area, which includes my static text there. This is in a certain style. This is another style. And the cool thing about that, and this is the most cool thing possible, is as you can see, I'm going to call myself a style idiot. I know a little bit enough to like, screw up demos and things like that. But here's the deal. Designers, they live in this all the time, so they have other tools that actually generate all this stuff for them, so they can build all this, send it to you. They'll send you here, you just go in here and say, okay, I'm going to paste in that, I'm going to wire it up by pasting in the value here, paste the CSS. So I had an example. This was about 2 weeks ago. One of our clients is building a new app, and it had a really cool interface. They were actually modeling it after trading cards. And so I'm like, I can't do that with the UX or, containers and stuff like that. So I just basically sent it to a CSS style designer. They generated a boilerplate HTML, which include SVG icons. That was kind of cool. It actually had SVG icons in there, and also the CSS. So they sent it to me. I pasted it right here. I then went to the dynamic parts and I overwrote the static text. Like this said, customer ID here. And I said, oh, okay, I'm going to go there. I'm going to go ahead and highlight that. I'm going to insert a field, customer ID, and I'm done. And then I hit render go, and it looked like what I asked for. And for me as a programmer, I now focused on how do I get it to work on the app and how to tie it up to a list control and load that data, etc. They spent their time, and then when the customer required some changes, they could do those changes in minutes because they just they relayed it out, sent me the two HTML, and off to the races from there. So this is a super powerful technique, and I appreciate that person asking the question, because you'll get basically a set of HTML you paste here, a set of CSS you'll paste here. They'll already be connected. They'll have already done the job of adding, the classes to the different elements. And then all I had to do, or all you'll have to do, is then rewire what data is shown in there. And things like items, if you've added items, those things will still be there. So if you get a rev, you may have to go back in and recopy some of these fields, but all your other work will be done pretty much for you. So it's pretty handy from that standpoint. So thank you. Good question. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Yeah.
If no one has any more questions on the ViewBox, we can move on
Okay.
to a UX question,
Great.
which relates to how you demonstrated the layouts earlier. This question is, any suggestions about show hide panels in the UX to best utilize the screen display size? So in there, they're asking like on a
Gotcha.
big screen, show both panels. On a small screen, show hide a single panel.
Gotcha. Okay. That's your panel technology. So let me go ahead and go here. And let's see. I'm going to go over. Do I have panel area? Oh, no. I'll have to do that. I'm going to create a new project. Let me show you how to do that. By the way, just for people, I know I covered this a little bit before, and bear with me if you know this here. This is my workspace, but I can have what are called projects within workspaces. And then you'll notice in my case, I'm basically subdividing it into, like, if I'm doing stuff on view boxes, because otherwise you get like 1,000 things. And I could do a filter of this stuff, but this helps me kind of control it and put it together. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new project. So the way I do that is I go to my web projects control panel, I go file, new project, and I'll call that panel technology. Okay. So now I go here, now it's kind of empty. So that's kind of nice there. I've still got my alpha DAO connection strings, so I don't have to recreate those. Those are workspace level items. But also my profiles here, it regenerates that, so I only have the walk. So if I'm going to publish this sub project to a part, it allows you to set up different publishing profiles. So now that I'm in there, I'm going to go ahead here. I'm going to go new UX component. Okay. And I'm going to go to my controls here. Now I could go ahead and start building panels here, but there's quick panels here. So I'm going to go ahead and click there, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make, and I'm going to select predefined layout, and I'm going to select, let's do a panel layout with 2 panel cards. Let's try that one right there. So it builds this kind of like shortcut text here, and then it builds mine there. So I can go in here. I'm going to go ahead and put a header, and I'll put a footer in here. So we just have some cool little things here. And in a header, I'm going to put a piece of static text. Hello. Okay. Okay, so there's a couple different ways to handle this. So we'll go panel, different sizes. Okay. So if I go and do my working preview here, you'll see with the panel layout, I've got my header area, my footer area, which nothing is in it. That's why it's not showing. And then my panels here. So for instance, if I were in a situation where I have a lot of screen real estate, I would show those. I'd probably use a panel navigator, but basically what you can do is now within here, I can use a combination of dockable panels and because dockable panels allow you to do things like, for instance, give you a minimum size. Let me show you what this is. So if you want to just like, this is an example of, let's go ahead and try this out. Let's go ahead and, I'm a little rusty here, so bear with me while I go through this here. So I'm going to say layout size is 40%. Okay. Actually, no, let me say here. Let's say minimum size is 200 pixels. Okay. So let's go ahead and do this and show here. Okay. Let's make that minimum size 100 pixels. I might have to come back and do a little better demo of this. I'm a little rusty and I'm just kind of trying to create a quick and simple way to do it, but I think, yeah, it's showing both at the same time. You know what? I'm going to take that as an action item and come back to that. Basically, the core issue is the following, is that with panel card technology, you can set things like layout sizes, minimum sizes, and dockability. And this allows you to control what's being seen on the screen in terms of altering how these panel cards are shown and hidden on there based on the screen real estate you have. So to do it justice, I'm just kind of fumbling right now, and I was in ViewBox mode, so let me come back and do a quick demonstration of that next time around, and I apologize to make you wait, but I think it'll be far more effective than me just kind of fumbling with it for the next 10 minutes, and we have other pieces there. By the way, just to let you know, let's go ahead and create a new UX here. I think there might be a pre-made one here. Let's see. We have the split view. There we go. There's one called Mobile App Framework 2-Panel Responsive Layout. If the screen is wide enough, the left and right panel are shown. Otherwise, only show the left panel. So let's go ahead and show you what that looks like here. Okay, so we have a panel layout. We have our first panel card, and we have our second panel card here. So let's go ahead and demonstrate how this works. Uses the old CSS icons. Okay, so you'll notice we have a left-hand panel and a right-hand panel. Now I'm going to go to vertical, and you'll notice that it only shows the left, but now it shows a button to go back and forth between the two of them here. Now, if I go back to horizontal, it says, oh, okay, you've got enough space, so I'm going to show both these panels. Okay, so it's using the panel layout kind of scenario over here. And in the panel card here, you'll notice my layout side for panel card number 1 is 300 here. And then if I go to panel card number 2, you'll see my minimum size is 300 here. So that must have been what I missed there. So now what happens is that if there is less than, oh, I was making it too short. If I go to this different sizes, go right here, make this to be 300 pixels. That's what I missed. But I don't have the navigation. I want to go back and show you that there. No, it's still doing that one. I must not have a setting there. So luckily, we've got this template right here, and it will show you how to do that. Then most importantly, this button then will show up on that, basically that button does a panel navigator, because at the panel layout level, we have what are called, do we have the dock panel? Yeah. Oh, no, we don't. Okay. So I'm going to come back and dissect this. But in the meantime, if you want to play with it, again, the one you want to do, and I'll go to UX component, is, there we go. There you go. It's called Mobile App Framework 2-Panel Responsive Layout. Now, there's another way to approach this, just to let you know from this standpoint here, is that in the UX properties, we have what's called responsive layout settings. And you'll notice this is where it's triggering some of those activities there. So it's saying if the screen width is where they made a directive here. So this is the one that was pre-built. Basically says if the screen width is greater than 600, fire this JavaScript. And what that JavaScript doing is, in this case, setting a button to be hidden or not hidden. So let me show you why that one's firing. So in this case, you'll see, and if you're in horizontal, you'll notice I have no button right here that's not showing. But if I go here, it's showing this button here. So that's my first responsive layout rule right here that says if the screen width is greater than that, then display this button. If it is less than that, then in this case, show the button. So that's how we're detecting this and that one button that's on there from there. And then the actual underlying panel card is being managed by minimum width. So if it gets to a certain width, it doesn't show that panel card. And that's why we show this button when you don't have that, so you can get to that second panel card. Alternatives to this too is like with if you have a control bar up top, you can say, oh, if I don't have enough width, then what I'm going to do is not show the second panel card. I'm going to dock it. And in the header, I can put a drop-down menu now that's visible to show them how to navigate between the two different panels from there. But we'll come back and do a little bit more work. That's actually a really good question. Apologize, I don't have more of a slick response at this point, but really good stuff on how we can use panel layouts. So thank you. And thanks for your patience.
Okay, switching gears. This person wants to know how they could undo changes they've made to their UX.
Oh, good question. Okay, so let's say on, let's go to this panel, different sizes. Okay, so let's say I'm working on this one, and I've saved it, and now I go into a hello and I say goodbye, and click OK. Now, there's not technically a undo function right this, you know, what I've done there. So I'll go ahead and save this and say, okay, if I work in preview there. But Alpha has a built-in functionality that I'm going to go back to the base. Oh, no, it's in this one right here. Sorry. It's in the, what do I call that? It's a panel. Okay. Here, I'm going to go to that panel, different sizes UX control. I'm in the web projects control panel. I'm going to right click on it and go to restore backup. And you'll see that there's a history for this one. And each time I save this control, it saves an archived version of it. So this is my current version, the latest one with goodbye. But now I can click on there and say restore this file. Now when I go back in there, you'll see that I'm back to saying hello. And so this way, if you save often, then you can use that essentially as a higher level undo to go back to a previous version. Now, one thing that's kind of nice about that feature is that if I right click on it, go to restore backup, you'll notice that it still has my more current version that's available. So I can say, oh, you know what? I did want that one. So I'm going to restore that file. And then now I'm back to where I changed that text here to goodbye. So an example of how I've used that in the past is that I've been working on something, and then what I did is I deleted some buttons and stuff like that, and I kept working on it, and then I go, oh, you know, I really wanted those controls. So what I did is I restored an old version, copied those controls out, came back to my current version, pasted them in there. So there's a number of different ways you can use to kind of kind of trap and use like almost a mini built-in version control. This is not meant to be a replacement for version control like Git or however you want to do that. But the benefit of this is that you're able to, it's going to do this for you automatically. Now, the other issue is that over time, it is saving in this project all those backup files. So you may have a situation where your project gets bigger and bigger and bigger over time. There is a way to go in and do cleanup. I can click on here and go restore, like cleaning up component backups, and now I'll get rid of stuff. Or I can go ahead and delete the old backup files. I can open up the backup folder here, and it will show me these saved versions. These are the versions. They basically zip it up with a unique name. So this is the most current one right here. I can go delete these, and then, because this folder over time underscore backup. So for instance, when we do Git, we usually ignore that folder because you don't really want to check in backups. That's more for the developer on the local machine. So that's kind of how you do undo in your system, and it's kind of built in automatic, and you can use that for that methodology. Good question. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and if I could add to that,
yes, please.
In the latest release of Alpha Anywhere, we actually added some new features for managing backups, which allow you to control how long a backup is kept, how many backups to keep, when they should be purged, and those are available in the project properties.
Gotcha. Let's see. I don't know if I have it in there.
It'd be under design time properties. Delete.
So I can tell it the backup folder.
And delete old backup. Check that. These are the new settings that are available.
Gotcha. And again, if you do not care about disk space, you don't have to worry about that. But if you like to prune this, keep it clean so it doesn't get really big, that's the handy way to do that from there. There's a lot of cool properties in here, so cool. Like if I say don't show when it's complete, I can re-enable that and other things like that. By the way, this default save format, I think it defaults to formatted JSON now, but you could also save it in binary for historical purposes. But JSON is kind of a little nicer behaving for version control and things like that. And there's help down here to understand what it says. Cool. Good follow-up. Thank you.
Okay.
Other questions?
Yeah, so this is switching gears, and
all right.
I don't know if you know the answer to this, but the question is, how do you call node services running on a remote Express.js server from?
That's I'm going to have to get back to you. The only note I know in here is that you can set up and call local items there. So I'd have to do research on that and get back to you. So we'll get back to you on that. I wouldn't even want to go down that road. I'm just learning how to use calling local node services. Now you can obviously consume web services using our web services technology, but I think you're talking about maybe executing node on another server or things like that. So again, I'll review the question and try and get some more details back to you.
Okay. It doesn't look like there's any more questions.
Cool. Well, we'll free up another 10 minutes there. So the key things we came out of here is talk a little bit more about responsive panels, how to manage panels in a responsive process. So we'll make a note on that. And then also was, and again, let me look at the question real quick. I just want to clarify I've had the question. Where is... can Alpha work with an external node server in addition to let's see. I'm in a node server running on a remote Express. I will get in touch with our development team and get the answer because I don't have the answer. So cool. Those are the two things. We've got some action items for this week. I'll be back in warmer climates. It was a little cold here in Boston, but wanted to say thank you very much for everybody for joining us. Thank you so much, Sarah, for all your assistance. And I want you guys to have a great week and enjoy yourself. And if you have any questions that pop up, get them over to guides@alphasoftware.com and let us, and we'll work on these other items that were brought up today. Thank you so much.